the Eubanks have been very vocal about their belief that Chris Jr. can beat Gennady Golovkin right now. In their view, Golovkin is slow, he's easy to hit, and they just don't see anything special there at all. Well, Frank Warren says that he actually offered the Eubanks the Golovkin fight and they turned it down. But in all fairness, it was clear at the time when Warren offered them that fight that they were trying to distance themselves from Frank Warren and move on to a different promoter, which they have done now with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Sport. But in this particular article, which I'll leave a link to as usual in the description below, I'm not going to read out the whole article. You can go read it for yourselves in its entirety. But in this article, it seems that they're now taking a slightly more cautious approach to this Golovkin fight. They're now talking about having the fight down the line. Personally, I think that what this whole Golovkin thing is about with the Eubanks is trying to use Golovkin's name to get Chris Jr.'s name bigger internationally. I think that's what it's all about, because they're talking about having this fight down the line, not right now. Eubank Sr. says that he thinks Jr. beats Golovkin right now, but he's not talking about having the fight right now, at least not in this interview, in this article. He's saying down the line it will be a great fight, a tough fight, but a great fight. Well, if it's a tough fight, then why are you saying Golovkin's slow, easy to hit, and all this kind of stuff? And another interesting thing they say in the article as well is that Chris Jr., this is what Chris Sr. said. He said Chris Jr. is not as, let me read it word for word, exactly what he says here. Yeah, he says, I'm not as cagey or cautious as Jr. I've been there and done this. Back in 1990, I fought Nigel Benn, and I don't know any critic who said I should have taken that fight. It's the same thing with Golovkin. Christopher beats him now. So that passage right there tells me that Chris Sr. is a lot more confident in Jr.'s ability than Jr. is. And we saw that actually from the Billy Joe Saunders fight, because Chris Sr. was very dismissive of Billy Joe Saunders. They both were, but I always got the impression that Chris Sr. had unrealistically high expectations for his son. He expected his son not to have any problems with nerves, not to freeze on a big occasion, not to let any of the atmosphere or anything get to him. He assumed that his son had the exact same mentality as himself, but his son doesn't. His son is a different person. Yeah, he's definitely inherited some things from his dad, but at the end of the day, he's not a clone of his dad, inside or outside. And that's what his dad has to understand. And maybe he's starting to see that now, because he says that he's not as cagey or cautious as Jr. So he's basically acknowledging there that Jr. is not quite as confident of beating people like Golovkin as he is. And maybe the Billy Joe Saunders fight was a reality check for Chris Jr. Maybe he's thinking, Dad, you know what? Calm down with all this Golovkin talk, man. You're going to get me destroyed out here. Quite honestly, I think that Chris Eubank Jr. would get annihilated by Gennady Golovkin if he fights him anytime soon. We don't know how good Chris Eubank Jr. is going to end up being. Maybe a couple years down the line. Chris Eubank Jr. will probably be super middleweight by then. Golovkin might be super middleweight by then. Maybe it'll be a viable fight. Maybe Chris Eubank Jr. would have proved himself to be a genuine world-class talent. Then again, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. But if the fight gets made anytime within the next 12 to 18 months, nah, man, this boy is going to get himself seriously hurt. And I think Chris Sr., obviously, he has a lot of pride in his son. But I think he's placing far too much emphasis on athletic ability. To him, athleticism is king. And I think that's what he sees in his son over Gennady Golovkin. His son is definitely more of an athlete than Golovkin. It's not like Golovkin ain't an athlete, but his son is more explosive, more athletic than Golovkin is. You know, very quick hands when he lets his shots go correctly. And I think he's banking on that way too much. Chris Senior, that is. He's looking at that and he's impressed by his son's athleticism. But technique, particularly when it's as excellent as Golovkin's technique is, technique will trump pure athleticism 95% of the time. If you've got that kind of terrific technique that Golovkin has, combined with the very good punching power and the good boxing brain, good chin, good conditioning, he's a very, very difficult man to beat. Now, there are some people saying, look, people are getting carried away with Golovkin because even after beating Lemieux, who was Lemieux really? Lemieux got knocked out by Rubio, and Rubio actually managed to drop managed to drop Lemieux with a headshot, which is something that Golovkin was unable to do. So there are some still detractors out there saying, well, people are getting way too carried away with Golovkin. And I think some people are getting carried away with Golovkin, yes. But there's no doubt about it that even if he's only fighting B-level fighters, and David Lemieux is a run-of-the-mill champion, really, at this stage. He's not Hall of Fame or anything like that, is he? He's a run-of-the-mill champion. He's not probably not even on the level of a Canelo or Miguel Cotto. Certainly not Canelo, in my opinion. So, you know, Golovkin hasn't really stepped up to the elite level yet in terms of his competition. But these guys are not exactly keen on fighting him, so it's not his fault. But until he does, until he ticks those boxes and gets in there with absolute elite guys, like a Canelo Alvarez or whatever, then there are still going to be question marks over this guy. You know, me personally, I think he beats Miguel Cotto. I think he beats Canelo Alvarez. I think he beats everyone at 160. I think if he was to fight Andre Ward anytime soon, Ward would beat him. That's my opinion. I think Ward beats him, but Kovalev beats Ward. That's how I see it. And I think all three of those guys believe that too. That's just my opinion. I believe that Ward thinks that Kovalev has got a very good chance of beating him. And I think Golovkin believes that Ward has got a very good chance of beating him. And that's why Golovkin is talking about catch weights in terms of a possible fight with Ward. He's talking about catch weights. And that's why Ward is not too keen on leaving 168 in a hurry if he can help it. So that's just my opinion, people. Drop your comments in the comment section below. As usual, have a read of the article for yourselves. See what you think of it. Do you think that Chris Eubank Jr. has any hope in hell of beating Golovkin? What I'll say is this. Eubank Jr. is certainly bigger than someone like Lemieux in terms of his height and whatnot. He's bigger. He's a bigger physical specimen. And I suspect that he's much stronger physically on the inside. You know, Eubank Jr., from what I've seen and also from what a lot of trainers have been saying, Adam Booth has said this as well. He said that from very early on, one thing he noticed about Eubank Jr. is that he's very physically strong on the inside. And that's actually where he's at home, is on the inside, mauling and pushing fighters around. He's more at home doing that than he is boxing on the outside and boxing pretty. The mauling and shoving and wrestling on the inside, that kind of dirty boxing is, and I don't mean dirty as in, you know, necessarily committing fouls, but I just mean that messy, very physical, you know, type of boxing where there's a lot of body contact. Chris Eubank Jr. tends to take to that type of fighting like a duck to water. So he's very physically strong. I'm sure he's physically stronger, just my opinion, but I'm sure he's physically stronger than Lemieux. So if there is anyone that's able to actually smother, that has the physical potential to be able to smother Golovkin and maybe push him back, smother his punches, it might be Chris Eubank Jr. Other than Andre Ward, obviously. Ward's very good at that stuff as well. But at middleweight, Eubank Jr. might have the physical potential to be able to do that. Whether he can actually execute it is a whole different story. But just from the size of him and the physical strength that he has, I mean, you look at that clip of the sparring footage against Carl Froch. Carl Froch is very strong. And Eubank Jr. was pushing Carl Froch back. I know it's only a short clip of sparring. You can't take too much from it. But this is a young kid that was sparring Carl Froch. A novice pro, really. And to be able to hang in there in terms of physical strength with the Cobra, that's impressive. I'm telling you. So, yeah, let me not long this video out. Let me know what you think of everything about everything I talked about in this video. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.